The wind howled like a wounded wolf across the Montana plains, driving sheets of snow against the weathered buildings of Stone River Ranch. It was the kind of February morning in 1875 that made even the hardiest cowhand question his choice of profession. Ice crystals hung in the air like tiny daggers, and the temperature had dropped so low that breath froze before it left a man's lips. May pulled her threadbare coat tighter around her shoulders as she stood at the ranch gate, her fingers numb despite the wool mittens that had seen better days. She'd walked 8 miles through the snow from the nearest town, following directions from a grizzled old-timer who'd taken pity on her at the general store. Her boots, stuffed with newspaper to plug the holes, were soaked through, and she could no longer feel her toes. The Stone River Ranch sprawled before her like a small kingdom carved from the wilderness. The main house stood proud despite the weather's assault, smoke rising from multiple chimneys. To the left, a massive barn sheltered what she assumed were prize horses and cattle. Bunkhouses lined the right side, and between them all, men moved with purpose despite the brutal cold. "You lost woman!" the voice came from behind her, rough as sandpaper. May turned to face a cowhand whose face was mostly hidden beneath a frost-covered beard. His eyes, hard as flint, assessed her from head to toe with the kind of look she'd grown accustomed to, suspicion mixed with something else she'd learned to guard against. "I'm here about the cook position," she said, lifting her chin despite the shivers that racked her body. "Heard tell you needed one after old Cookie passed." The man spat tobacco juice into the snow, leaving a dark stain. "Mr. Stone don't hire no women for ranch work. Best you head back to town before the storm gets worse." "I walked 8 miles to get here," May replied steadily. "Least you could do is let me speak to Mr. Stone himself." "Stubborn as a mule, ain't ya?" Another voice joined the conversation, this one younger, with an edge of amusement. "Red, why don't you go check on the horses? I'll handle this." May watched the bearded cowhand. Red stomp away, muttering curses before turning her attention to the newcomer. He was younger than most of the ranch hands she'd seen, perhaps 30, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of winter sky, unlike the others bundled in heavy coats and scarves. He wore only a leather vest over his work shirt, as if the cold didn't touch him. "Name's Caleb," he said, not offering his hand. Men rarely did to women like her, women traveling alone, seeking work. "You really walk 8 miles in this weather." "I did." "Why?" The simple question hung between them like icicles from the barn roof. May had rehearsed her answer during the long, cold walk, but standing here now, she found herself speaking plain truth. "Because hungry feels worse than cold, and I'm good at what I do." Something flickered in Caleb's eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe just surprise at her directness. He studied her for a long moment, taking in the worn coat, the determined set of her jaw, the way she stood despite her obvious exhaustion. "You ever cook for 25 hungry cowhands?" "I've cooked for more with less," May answered. "Give me a kitchen and supplies. I'll prove it." Caleb glanced toward the main house, then back at her. "Mr. Stone's in Billings on business. Won't be back for 3 days. We've been making do with burnt beans and tough biscuits since Cookie died." "Then you need me more than you think," May said, sensing an opening. 3 days is long enough to show you what I can do. If Mr. Stone doesn't approve when he returns, I'll leave without argument. And if the men don't approve before then?" May's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "Hungry men are easier to please than most folks think. Fill their bellies with good food, and they'll forget to ask questions about where it came from." Caleb was quiet for a moment, and May could see him weighing the decision. The wind picked up, driving snow between them like a curtain. When it cleared, he'd made up his mind. "Kitchen's in the back of the main house," he said. "Pantry's full but disorganized. Cookie was half blind his last year and too proud to admit it. You'll find the bunkhouse kitchen through the covered walkway. That's where you'll do most of your cooking. Men eat at 6 morning, noon, and 6 evening. Miss a meal. and they'll run you off faster than a prairie fire." "I won't, miss." Caleb turned to lead the way, then paused. "What do I call you?" "May," she said simply. No last name. Last names invited questions she wasn't ready to answer. The kitchen was a disaster. Pots crusted with mysterious substances littered every surface. The stove was thick with grease, and the pantry looked like a tornado had passed through. May stood in the doorway, surveying the chaos, while Caleb watched from behind. "Cookie was a good man," he said, almost apologetically. "Just got old." "We all do," May replied, already rolling up her sleeves. "If we're lucky." She moved into the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who'd made many such spaces her temporary home. First things first, water needed heating for cleaning. She found the pump, worked it until clear water flowed, and set multiple pots to heat on the stove. "I'll need lye soap, vinegar if you have it, and clean rags," she said without looking at Caleb. "Also, what time is it now?" "Just past 2. You've got 4 hours until supper." 4 hours to clean this disaster and produce a meal for 25 men who were already skeptical of her presence. May had faced worse odds. "Then I'd better get started." Caleb lingered in the doorway. "You sure you can handle this?" May paused in her work, meeting his gaze directly. "Mr. Caleb, I've been handling whatever life threw at me since I was 15 years old. A dirty kitchen and hungry cowboys don't even make the list of things that scare me." He left then, but not before she caught something in his expression. A flicker of recognition, perhaps, or understanding. May didn't have time to puzzle it out. She had work to do. By the time the dinner bell rang at 6 o'clock, the kitchen gleamed. More importantly, the aromas drifting from the bunkhouse dining room had drawn cowboys like bees to honey. May had found a treasure trove in the pantry once she'd organized it. Smoked ham, dried beans that just needed proper soaking, flour and lard for biscuits, preserved peaches, and even some precious cinnamon. She'd prepared a feast from simple ingredients: ham and bean soup thick enough to stand a spoon in, light as air biscuits with butter and peach preserves, coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe, and the coup de grace, 3 apple pies made from the dried apples she'd discovered hidden behind sacks of cornmeal. The dining room fell silent when she entered carrying the first pot of soup. 25 faces turned toward her with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. These men weren't accustomed to women in their domain, especially not women who appeared from nowhere claiming they could cook. "Soup's ready," she announced, her voice carrying despite her exhaustion. "Biscuits are on the warming shelf. Pies need another few minutes. Eat it hot or eat it cold. Makes no difference to me." She turned to leave, but Red's voice stopped her. "Where'd you learn to cook, woman?" May paused at the doorway. "Same place you learned to punch cattle. I expect by doing it." The first spoonful of soup brought a collective sigh from the room. By the time the biscuits made their rounds, conversation had resumed, focused now on the food rather than the cook. When May brought in the pies, still steaming from the oven, one young cowhand actually applauded before his companion's glares silenced him. Caleb appeared as she was cleaning up, carrying his empty plate. Unlike the others, he brought it to the kitchen himself rather than leaving it on the table. "That was the best meal we've had in months," he said, setting the plate in the wash basin. "It was simple fare," May replied, not pausing in her scrubbing. "Tomorrow will be better once I get the lay of things." The men think so too, though most are too proud to say it. He leaned against the doorframe, watching her work. "Where will you sleep?" "We don't have quarters for a woman." May had been dreading this question. "I'll make do in the kitchen. Won't be the first time I've slept near a warm stove." "There's a small room off the pantry," Caleb said after a moment. "Cookie used it for storing preserves, but there's a cot in there. It's not much, but it's private." Private. The word held more value than gold to someone who'd spent too many nights in places where privacy was a luxury. That would be acceptable. Caleb straightened from the doorframe. "One more thing. Some of the men, they'll test you, make comments, maybe try to rile you. Best to ignore them." "Mr. Caleb," May said, finally turning to face him fully. "I've been tested by worse men than cowboys. As long as they stay out of my kitchen and eat what I cook, we'll get along fine." He nodded, seeming satisfied with her answer. As he turned to leave, May noticed something she'd missed before. The way he moved, fluid and confident, spoke of more than ranch work. His hands, while calloused, bore the kind of scars that came from rope work, not the thick calluses of someone who'd spent a lifetime punching cattle. There was education in his speech, too, carefully hidden but there if you knew to listen for it. Caleb Stone was not what he appeared to be, but then again, May reflected as she surveyed her new domain. Neither was she. That night, she lay on the narrow cot in the storage room, surrounded by shelves of preserves and canned goods. The wind still howled outside, but the thick walls muffled it to a distant moan. For the first time in months, she was warm, fed, and, temporarily at least, safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The men would test her. As Caleb had warned, Mr. Stone would return eventually and might not be pleased to find a woman installed in his kitchen. And somewhere in the back of her mind lurked the constant fear that her past would catch up with her, that someone would recognize her from, before. But tonight, she had a roof over her head and the promise of purpose come morning. In the harsh world of the Montana frontier, that was more than many could claim. As sleep finally took her, May's last thought was of Caleb's eyes, winter sky blue and holding secrets of their own. She'd learned to read men out of necessity, to spot danger before it struck. But Caleb Stone remained a puzzle, one she sensed might prove either her salvation or her downfall. The wind continued its lonely howl across the plains. But May slept soundly, wrapped in the warmth of her small sanctuary. Tomorrow would come soon enough, bringing with it the endless cycle of meals and men and the delicate dance of survival. But for now, she was safe. And in the bunkhouse, Caleb lay awake on his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling and remembering he'd seen her before, though she didn't know it, in a place she'd probably prefer to forget, in circumstances that still gnawed at his conscience. He'd done nothing then, paralyzed by his own demons and the expectations of his true station. But fate, it seemed, had given him a second chance. This time, he vowed silently to the darkness he would not fail her, even if it meant maintaining his charade a while longer, even if it meant defying his father when he returned. May had walked 8 miles through a blizzard for a chance at honest work. The least he could do was ensure she got it. The first week passed in a blur of flour-dusted mornings and grease-splattered evenings. May had fallen into a rhythm as natural as breathing up at 4 to start the breakfast fires. Biscuits in the oven by 5. Coffee strong enough to wake the dead by 5:30. The men had grown accustomed to her presence, though she still caught sideways glances and heard conversations halt when she entered a room. It was during the second week that she began to notice Caleb's quiet interventions. The first time, she'd been struggling with a 50-pound sack of flour, trying to hoist it onto the storage shelf. Her back ached from the constant work, and the bag seemed to grow heavier with each attempt. Without a word, Caleb appeared at her elbow, took the sack from her hands, and placed it on the shelf. He was gone before she could thank him, leaving only the lingering scent of leather and horse. The second time, she discovered someone had already filled all the water barrels in the kitchen, a task that usually took her an hour each morning, hauling bucket after bucket from the pump. Fresh kindling appeared stacked neat beside the stove. The icy steps leading to the root cellar had been scraped clear and scattered with ash for traction. "You don't need to do that," she told him one morning, catching him in the act of fixing a loose board on the kitchen step. The hammer looked natural in his hands, but she noticed again how he held it. Precise, careful, not like a man who'd spent his life doing rough work. board was loose, he said simply, not looking up from his task. Someone could trip. Someone, May repeated, a hint of amusement creeping into her voice. That someone being me, since I'm the only one who uses these steps regular-like. Caleb's hammer paused mid-swing. Safety's important on a ranch. So is letting folks maintain their independence, she countered, but her tone was gentle. She'd learned to recognize kindness when she saw it, rare as it was in her experience. But thank you all the same. He finished driving the nail home, tested the board with his boot, then finally met her eyes. You always this proud about accepting help? You always this sneaky about offering it? That earned her something she hadn't seen before, a genuine smile that transformed his weather-worn features. For a moment, he looked younger, lighter, like a completely different man from the serious cowhand who kept to himself in the bunkhouse. Might be we're both set in our ways, he allowed, gathering his tools. But that board needed fixing regardless. May watched him walk away, noting again the way he moved, too smooth for a working cowhand, too controlled. She'd known men who walked like that before, men who'd learned to dance in drawing rooms before they'd learned to ride. But what would such a man be doing working cattle on his own family's ranch? The mystery of Caleb Stone would have to wait. She had 20 pounds of potatoes to peel for the noon meal. It was young Tommy Morrison who first gave voice to what some of the other men had been thinking. Tommy was 17, fresh-faced despite a season of ranch work, with the kind of loose tongue that comes from youth and ignorance combined. My ma always said a woman traveling alone ain't no better than she ought to be, he announced during dinner one night, loud enough for May to hear from the kitchen. Said decent women stay put, mind their homes. The dining room went quiet. May's hand stilled on the dish she was washing, but she didn't turn around. She'd heard worse, endured worse. Words were just air, after all. Your ma sounds like a wise woman, Red Callahan added, his gravelly voice carrying clearly. Makes a man wonder what kind of circumstances send a woman out looking for work among strangers. Maybe circumstances that ain't none of your business. Caleb's voice cut through like a blade. Man's past is his own. Same goes for a woman. Just saying what everybody's thinking, Red protested. Ain't natural is all. What ain't natural is grown men gossiping like church ladies. Caleb replied, Miss May's been here 2 weeks. Any man in this room eaten better in that time. A mumble of agreement rippled through the room. Whatever questions they had about her past, none could deny that their bellies had been consistently full of good food since her arrival. Still, Tommy persisted, emboldened by Red's support. Decent women don't. The crash of a plate hitting the floor silenced him. May stood in the kitchen doorway, her face composed despite the anger burning in her chest. The broken pieces of crockery lay scattered at her feet. Decent women, she said quietly, her voice carrying in the sudden hush. Do whatever they must to survive. Decent women scrub floors until their hands bleed, wash strangers' clothes until their backs break, and yes, cook for men who'd rather speculate about their virtue than appreciate their labor. She stepped over the broken plate, moving into the room with deliberate calm. You want to know about decent women? Tommy Morrison. Decent women bury children who starved because there wasn't enough food. Decent women watch their husbands die from fever and find themselves with no home, no family, no means of support except what their 2 hands can provide. Tommy had shrunk back in his seat, his face flushing red. May continued, her voice never rising above conversational level. Decent women make choices, boy, hard choices. And if walking 8 miles through a blizzard to cook for ungrateful cowboys means keeping body and soul together another day, then that's what decent women do. The room was tomb silent. May's gaze swept across the assembled men, most of whom found sudden interest in their empty plates. Now, she continued, if anyone has issue with my cooking, speak up. If you've got issue with my presence, take it to Mr. Stone when he returns. But if you're going to eat my food, you'll keep your speculation about my decency to yourself. Are we clear? "Yes, ma'am," came a chorus of mumbled responses. May turned on her heel and walked back to the kitchen, leaving the broken plate where it lay. Behind her, she heard Caleb's voice, low and dangerous. "Clean up that mess, Tommy, and if I hear another word about Miss May's character from you or anyone else, you'll be looking for work come morning. That clear enough for you?" She didn't hear Tommy's response, but the scrape of chairs and quick footsteps told her the young man was hurrying to comply. May returned to her dishes, her hands shaking slightly now that the confrontation was over. She'd stood up to worse men than Tommy Morrison, but it never got easier, defending herself against assumptions and accusations. Later, as she swept up the last of the plate fragments Tommy had missed, Caleb appeared in the kitchen doorway. "I apologize for Tommy," he began, but May held up a hand. "No need. Boy's young, speaking what he's been taught. Can't fault him for that. Can fault him for rudeness, though." Caleb moved into the kitchen, picked up a dish towel, and began drying the plates she'd washed. It was the first time he'd ventured beyond the doorway during her evening work. They worked in companionable silence for a while, May washing and Caleb drying. It was strangely domestic, peaceful even, after the tension of dinner. "What you said in there," Caleb ventured finally. "About burying children, losing a husband. Was that true?" May's hands stilled in the soapy water. "Does it matter?" "No," he said after a pause. "I suppose it doesn't." But she could feel his curiosity, carefully contained but present nonetheless. May had learned to recognize when men wanted more from her story, her truth, her pain laid bare for their consumption. Caleb, to his credit, didn't push. "We all got stories," she said finally, resuming her washing. "Some true, some we tell ourselves to make sense of things. Mine's no more special than anyone else's." "I wouldn't say that," Caleb murmured, so quiet she almost missed it. They finished the dishes in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet now, charged with unspoken questions and carefully guarded answers. When the last plate was shelved, Caleb hung the dish towel on its hook with precise movements. "Thank you," May said softly, "for speaking up in there, and for everything else." He paused at the doorway, silhouetted against the lamplight from the dining room. "You don't need defending. Miss May proved that yourself tonight, but sometimes it don't hurt to know someone's willing to stand with you." After he left, May stood alone in her spotless kitchen, pondering his words. She'd been alone so long, depended on no one but herself for so long, that the idea of someone standing with her felt foreign as Chinese silk, dangerous too. Depending on others led to disappointment at best, disaster at worst. But as she prepared for bed in her small room, May couldn't deny the warmth that Caleb's words had kindled in her chest. It had been years since anyone had offered to stand with her. No strings attached, no payment expected. She thought again of that smile he'd given her, transforming his face from careful neutrality to something almost boyish. There were depths to Caleb's stone, currents running beneath the surface that spoke of education and refinement carefully hidden beneath cowhand roughness. What was he hiding from, or whom? May blew out her candle and settled onto her narrow cot. Outside, the March wind still howled, but it had lost some of its bitter edge. Spring was coming to Montana, slow but sure. And with it, she suspected, would come answers to questions she wasn't sure she was ready to ask. The next morning brought fresh challenges. The henhouse had been raided by a fox in the night, leaving feathers and carnage in its wake. May stood surveying the damage, calculating how many eggs they'd lose and how to stretch their remaining supplies. "I can fix the fence," Caleb offered, appearing as he always did when there was trouble. "Make it fox-proof." "I'd appreciate that," May said, then surprised herself by adding, "I could use the help gathering what eggs are left, too. If you've got time." His smile was answer enough. They worked together in the cold morning air, Caleb mending the fence while May collected the surviving hens and what eggs remained. It was peaceful work, punctuated by the occasional squawk of an indignant chicken and Caleb's soft cursing when the hammer found his thumb instead of a nail. "You're not much of a carpenter," May observed, hiding her amusement as he shook out his injured hand. "Better with horses than hammers," he admitted ruefully. "Though don't let the boys know that. Got a reputation to maintain." "Your secret's safe with me," she assured him, then added impulsively, "All of them." Caleb's hand stilled on the fence board. When he looked up at her, his winter blue eyes held a question she wasn't ready to answer. "We all got secrets, Mr. Caleb," she said softly. "Some worth keeping, some not. Figure a man's got a right to his own, long as they don't hurt nobody else." He held her gaze a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "Same goes for a woman." They finished the repairs as the sun climbed higher, painting the Montana hills gold. The surviving hens clucked contentedly in their reinforced home, and May had enough eggs for breakfast biscuits. It wasn't much, but it was enough. As they walked back toward the kitchen, Caleb cleared his throat. "Mr. Stone returns tomorrow." May's step faltered slightly. She'd known this day was coming, had been preparing for it, but somehow the reality still caught her off guard. "Reckon he'll have something to say about me being here," she said, striving for casual indifference. "Reckon he will," Caleb agreed. "But the men will speak for you. You've proven yourself twice over." "Men's opinions don't always carry weight with the boss," May pointed out, "especially when it comes to keeping women on the payroll." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice held an odd note she couldn't quite identify. Mr. Stone's a fair man. Hard, maybe, but fair. He'll see what you've done here, how you've kept his men fed and working. That counts for something." "Hope you're right," May said, though hope had long ago become a luxury she couldn't afford. That evening, she outdid herself with dinner roast beef with all the fixings, using some of the better cuts she'd been saving. If this was to be her last meal at Stone River Ranch, she'd make it memorable. The men seemed to sense the significance of the occasion. Even Red and Tommy were subdued, offering grudging compliments on the Yorkshire pudding that accompanied the roast. Someone had brought out a fiddle after dinner, and the soft strains of Red River Valley drifted through the evening air. Caleb lingered after the others had gone, helping her clear tables without being asked. "Whatever happens tomorrow," he said quietly, "you should know you've made a difference here. Cookie was a good man, but these last weeks, the men are eating better, working better. That's your doing." May felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. "Just doing what I was hired for." "No," Caleb said firmly. "You've done more than that. You've made this place a little more home-like. That's no small thing for men who don't have much home to speak of." The word home lodged in May's throat like a stone. Home was a concept she'd given up on long ago. A fairy tale for other people, people with families and futures and clean pasts. "I should get these dishes done," she managed, turning away before he could see the emotion on her face. But Caleb caught her arm gently, his touch warm through her sleeve. May. Just her name, nothing more, but the way he said it, soft, careful, like something precious, undid her completely. The tears came then, silent but unstoppable. Weeks of exhaustion and fear and desperate hope finally breaking through her carefully maintained walls. "I can't go back out there," she whispered, the words torn from somewhere deep inside. "I can't go back to what I was before. I can't." Caleb's hand moved from her arm to her shoulder, a steadying presence. "You won't have to. I'll make sure of it." "You can't promise that. You're just a—" She stopped herself before saying, "just a cowhand," but he heard it anyway. "I'll make sure of it," he repeated, and there was steel in his voice now, the kind of authority that didn't come from working cattle. "Trust me, May." Please. She looked up at him through her tears. This mysterious man with his gentle hands and hidden depths. Trust was another luxury she'd given up on, but something in his eyes, that winter blue intensity, made her want to believe. "All right," she whispered. "All right." He squeezed her shoulder once, then stepped back, giving her space to compose herself. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow will sort itself out." After he left, May stood in her kitchen trying to make sense of what had just happened. She'd shown weakness, let her guard down, things that had always led to disaster in the past. But Caleb hadn't taken advantage, hadn't pushed for more than she was willing to give. Maybe, just maybe, there were still decent men in the world. She finished her chores mechanically, her mind already racing ahead to tomorrow. Mr. Stone would return, would judge her fitness to remain. Would Caleb's word carry any weight with his employer? Would the testimony of the other men matter? May had survived disappointment before. She could survive it again if necessary. But as she lay in her narrow bed that night, she allowed herself one small prayer to whatever power might be listening. "Let me stay, just this once. Let something good last. Let me have this small piece of peace I've carved out in this kitchen, this work that fills my hands and quiets my mind. Let me stay." Outside, the March wind had gentled to a whisper, carrying with it the promise of spring and change and possibilities she didn't dare name. Tomorrow would come soon enough, bringing judgment or reprieve. But tonight, she had a warm bed, a full stomach, and the memory of Caleb's steadying hand on her shoulder. For now, that was enough. The tension in the bunkhouse had been building for days, thick as smoke from a prairie fire. May felt it in the sideways glances, the conversations that died when she entered a room, the way some of the men had started taking their coffee outside rather than linger in the dining hall. Red Callahan was at the center of it, his gravelly voice spreading poison with every whispered word. She knew what he was saying. She'd caught fragments here and there. "Rosebell, that kind of woman, ain't fitting." The words followed her like shadows as she went about her work. But May kept her head high and her hands busy. She'd learned long ago that work was the only defense against whispers. It was a Thursday morning when things came to a head. May was kneading bread dough, finding solace in the rhythmic push and fold, when she heard Red's voice carrying from the dining hall. "I tell you, I seen her before," he was saying, "down at the Rosebell in Billings, serving drinks and other things to any man with coin in his pocket." May's hands stilled on the dough. The Rosebell. The name alone was enough to make her stomach clench with remembered desperation. "You sure about that?" That was Frank Cooper, one of the older hands. "Could be you're mistaken." "I don't make mistakes about women like that," Red insisted. "Same red hair, same way of walking. I'd bet my month's wages on it." "Even if you're right." Another voice chimed in. Bill Santos. May thought, "Woman's got a right to change her ways. She's been nothing but proper since she got here. A leopard don't change its spots." Red countered. "And that kind of woman, well, they got ways of seeming proper when it suits them. But underneath, still the same." May forced herself to continue kneading, though her hands trembled. The Rosebell. Yes, she'd been there. For 3 months after James died, when the money ran out and the landlord wouldn't wait another day. She'd served drinks, smiled at lonely men, and kept herself as clean as she could in a place where cleanliness, moral or otherwise, was a luxury few could afford. But she'd gotten out, found other work, moved on, tried to leave that desperate chapter behind, until now. "Maybe we should ask Mr. Stone what he thinks about having that kind of woman cooking our food." Red continued, warming to his theme. "Man's got a reputation to consider. Having a former entertainer on the premises ain't good for business." The sound of a chair scraping back made May look up. Through the doorway, she could see Caleb rising from his seat, his face dark with suppressed anger. "That's enough, Red." "Just speaking truth," Red protested. Man's got a right to speak truth. Man's got a right to keep his mouth shut when he doesn't know what he's talking about. Caleb countered, You've been spreading these stories for days now. Either speak your piece direct or keep quiet. Red stood too, and May could see the confrontation building like storm clouds on the horizon. Maybe I will speak direct. Maybe I'll tell Mr. Stone exactly what kind of woman he's got in his kitchen, unless... He paused, a sly smile crossing his weathered face. Unless she wants to be friendly-like, show some appreciation for my discretion. The implication hung in the air like a bad smell. May felt bile rise in her throat. It was always the same men who thought a woman's past gave them rights to her present. She was moving before she'd made the conscious decision, wiping her flour-covered hands on her apron as she strode into the dining hall. Every head turned toward her. Mr. Callahan, she said, her voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. If you have something to say about me, say it now, to my face. Red's smile widened. Well, the lady wants to talk? All right then, I seen you at the Rose Bell in Billings, serving drinks in a dress cut down to here. He gestured crudely. Sitting on men's laps, laughing at their jokes, making them feel special for the price of a whiskey. And May asked quietly. The simple question seemed to catch him off guard. And you're here now, pretending to be some decent woman, cooking for honest men. I am cooking for honest men, May interrupted. Though I'm starting to question if you're one of them. She moved closer, and several of the men shifted uncomfortably. Yes, I worked at the Rose Bell for 3 months after my husband died, when I had no money, no family, and no choices that you'd probably consider decent. I served drinks. I smiled at lonely men. I did what I had to do to keep a roof over my head and food in my belly. She paused, letting her words sink in. What I didn't do was sell myself, despite what you're implying. Not that it's any business of yours what I did or didn't do. I'm here now, doing honest work, and doing it well. If you have a problem with my cooking, speak up. If you have a problem with my past, keep it to yourself. Listen here, woman, Red started, but Caleb cut him off. No, you listen. Caleb's voice was quiet, but it carried an edge sharp enough to cut glass. Miss May has been here near a month, working harder than any 2 men, keeping us fed and the kitchen running smooth. What she did or didn't do before she came here is her business. You sweet on her, Caleb, Red sneered. That why you're defending a woman like... The punch came so fast May barely saw it. One moment Red was standing, sneering. The next he was on the floor, blood streaming from his nose, and Caleb was shaking out his fist. I warned you, Caleb said calmly, as if he hadn't just laid out a man 20 pounds heavier than him. You want to question Miss May's character? You go through me first. Any of you. His gaze swept the room, challenging. No one moved. Red struggled to his feet, one hand pressed to his bleeding nose. You'll regret that, boy. When Mr. Stone hears about this. When Mr. Stone hears about this, he'll know you've been spreading tales about a woman under his protection and making unseemly suggestions about how she might show appreciation for your silence. Caleb replied. How do you think that'll go for you? Red's face, already flushed with anger and pain, went pale. He knew as well as anyone that Samuel Stone, for all his hardness, had strict rules about how women were to be treated on his land. This ain't over, Red muttered, but he was already backing toward the door. Yes, it is, Caleb said firmly. You'll pack your things and be gone by noon. Draw your wages from the foreman and don't come back. You ain't got the authority. Try me. Something in Caleb's voice, some note of absolute certainty, made Red pause. He looked around the room for support, but found only averted eyes. Even his usual allies seemed unwilling to back him against Caleb's unexpected steel. With a final muttered curse, Red stomped out, slamming the door behind him. The dining hall remained silent for a long moment before normal conversation slowly resumed. May found herself standing alone with Caleb, the other men having suddenly remembered urgent tasks elsewhere. She looked at his hand, already beginning to swell. "You need ice for that," she said quietly. "It's fine." "It's not." She turned back toward the kitchen. "Come on." He followed her without protest. In the kitchen, May wrapped chunks of ice from the ice house in a clean cloth and pressed it gently against his knuckles. Caleb hissed at the contact but didn't pull away. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, not looking at his face. "Now there'll be more talk." "Let them talk." His free hand moved to tilt her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You don't owe anyone explanations about your past. May, not Red, not the others, not even me." "But you know now," she said, hating how small her voice sounded. "You know where I knew before." The admission hit her like cold water. "What?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I saw you there, at the Rose Bell, last December." May pulled back, the ice pack dropping from his hand. You were there." "Passing through Billings on business." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "I saw you serving drinks, trying to dodge the worst of the grabbing hands. Saw how you handled yourself with dignity in a place that didn't have much." "And you said nothing all this time?" "What was there to say that I'd seen you surviving, that I'd watched you work yourself to exhaustion rather than take the easier money that place offered?" His voice roughened. "That I'd been too much of a coward to help you then?" May stared at him, trying to reconcile this confession with the man she'd come to know. "Why would you have helped me? You didn't know me." "Didn't have to know you to see you didn't belong there." Caleb flexed his injured hand, wincing. "I had money in my pocket, could have offered you honest work, helped you get out, but I was dealing with my own troubles, took the coward's way and told myself it wasn't my business." "It wasn't your business," May said softly. "Maybe not, but when you showed up here, it felt like a second chance, to do right this time." He met her eyes again. "That's why I've been helping, trying to make up for not helping before." May was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. Then, surprising herself, she laughed, a short, bitter sound. "So your kindness was guilt?" "At first, maybe," Caleb admitted, "but not now. Now it's—" He trailed off, seeming to search for words. "Now it's what?" Instead of answering, he reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. "Now it's because you're the strongest woman I've ever met, and you deserve better than what life's handed you." May felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back fiercely. "I'm not strong. I'm just stubborn." "Same thing, sometimes." They stood there, the kitchen suddenly feeling too small, too warm. May was acutely aware of his proximity, of the way his presence seemed to fill the space. It had been so long since she'd felt anything beyond wariness around a man. But Caleb. A shout from outside broke the moment. Through the window, they could see Red loading his belongings onto a wagon, his movements sharp with anger. Several of the men stood watching, ensuring he left without trouble. "Will Mr. Stone support your decision?" May asked, moving to rewrap Caleb's hand properly. "He will." The certainty in his voice made her look up. "You sound very sure." "I am." He caught her hand, stilling her ministrations. "May, whatever happens, you're safe here. I promise you that." "You can't promise." "I can." His thumb brushed across her knuckles, the touch sending an unexpected shiver through her. "Trust me." There was that word again. Trust. May had learned to trust no one but herself. But something about Caleb made her want to believe. Maybe it was the way he'd defended her. Maybe it was the guilt he carried for not helping before. Or maybe it was simply the way he looked at her, not with pity or desire, but with respect. "All right," she whispered, not sure what she was agreeing to, but knowing it was important. Caleb squeezed her hand once before releasing it. I should go make sure Red leaves without causing more trouble. May watched him go, her thoughts churning. In one morning, everything had changed. Her past was out in the open, at least partially. A man had been fired for speaking it aloud. And Caleb had known all along. She returned to her bread dough, finding comfort in the familiar work. Whatever came next, she still had a job to do. The men would need feeding, regardless of the drama that had unfolded. As she shaped the loaves, May allowed herself to think about Caleb's touch, the way his eyes had held hers, the promise in his voice. It was dangerous, this feeling blooming in her chest. She'd learned the hard way that depending on others led to heartbreak. But as the morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows, painting everything gold, May wondered if maybe, just maybe, she'd been wrong. Perhaps strength wasn't always about standing alone. Perhaps, sometimes, it was about learning to accept the hand that reached out to help. The bread went into the oven, filling the kitchen with warmth and the promise of good things to come. Outside, she could hear the normal sounds of ranch life resuming, horses neighing, men calling to each other, the creak of wagon wheels. Red was gone, taking his poison with him, but his words lingered like smoke, and May knew there would be others who wondered, who whispered, who judged. There always were. The difference now was that she wasn't facing them alone. Caleb had stood for her, publicly and violently. The other men had seen it, would remember it. And Mr. Stone would return tomorrow to find his ranch changed, his kitchen run by a woman with a past. May dusted flour from her hands and began preparing for the noon meal. Whatever tomorrow brought, she'd meet it head on. She'd survived the Rosebell, survived the whispers and the shame and the desperate choices. She could survive this too. And maybe, with Caleb standing beside her, she could do more than just survive. Maybe she could actually live. The thought terrified her almost as much as it gave her hope. The smell of smoke woke her. May's eyes flew open in the darkness, her body instantly alert. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, caught in one of the nightmares that sometimes plagued her sleep. But the acrid scent was real, growing stronger by the second. She rolled out of bed, bare feet hitting the cold floor. Orange light flickered under her door. The kitchen, her kitchen, was on fire. Without thinking, May grabbed her shawl and yanked open the door. Heat hit her like a physical blow. The entire kitchen was ablaze. Flames licking up the walls, consuming the shelves she'd so carefully organized. The fire had already spread to the dining area, hungry tongues of orange devouring the tables where the men took their meals. "Fire!" she screamed, her voice barely audible over the roar of the flames. "Fire in the kitchen!" But even as she shouted, May couldn't bring herself to flee. Her few possessions were in that small room, her mother's cookbook, the only thing she had left of family, her saved wages, hidden in a flour tin, everything she owned in the world. She pulled her shawl over her head and plunged toward the pantry. The heat was overwhelming, stealing the breath from her lungs. Smoke filled her eyes, nose, throat. She dropped to her knees, crawling now, feeling her way by memory. The flour tin was on the bottom shelf, the cookbook beside it. Her fingers closed on familiar leather binding just as a beam crashed down behind her, sending a shower of sparks across her back. May cried out but clutched the book to her chest, groping for the tin with her other hand. May. Someone was calling her name, but it seemed to come from very far away. The smoke was so thick now she couldn't see anything but orange and black. Her lungs burned. The tin. Where was the tin? Strong arms seized her from behind, lifting her bodily from the floor. "No," she struggled weakly. "My things." "Leave them," Caleb's voice, rough with smoke and fear. "We have to get out now." But May fought him, desperate. That tin held 3 months' wages. her only security against returning to places like the Rose Bell. "Please, the tin!" Another beam crashed down. So close the heat singed her hair. Caleb cursed and tightened his grip, carrying her like a child despite her struggles. She clutched the cookbook desperately as he navigated through the inferno, his body shielding hers from the worst of the flames. Then they were outside, cold air hitting her scorched lungs like a blessing and a curse. May coughed violently as Caleb set her down in the snow, far from the burning building. Her legs wouldn't hold her. She collapsed to her knees, still clutching her mother's cookbook, watching her life burn. "May, are you hurt?" Caleb's hands were on her face, her arms, checking for burns. "Look at me. Are you hurt?" She couldn't answer through the coughing. Everything hurt. Her throat, her lungs, her heart. The kitchen was gone. Her sanctuary. Her purpose. Her carefully built new life. All of it turning to ash before her eyes. Men were running everywhere now, forming a bucket brigade from the water pump. But it was too late for the kitchen. The fire had taken hold too deeply. Fed by flour and lard and all the combustibles of a working kitchen, they focused on keeping it from spreading to the other buildings. "My wages," May whispered hoarsely when she could finally speak. "They were in a tin." "Just money," Caleb said fiercely, pulling her against him. "You're alive. That's what matters." But he didn't understand. Without that money, she had nothing. No way to leave if she needed to. No security against the world's cruelties. She was dependent again. Vulnerable again. The very situation she'd worked so hard to avoid. Samuel Stone arrived in the midst of the chaos, his face grim as he surveyed the damage. May had never actually met the ranch owner. He'd been away on business since before her arrival. He was an older man, tall and weathered, with a kind of presence that commanded attention without effort. His eyes found her huddled in Caleb's arms, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. "Anyone hurt?" he called out. "No, sir," Frank Cooper reported. "Got everyone out in time, but the kitchen's a total loss." Stone nodded curtly, then approached May and Caleb. "You're the cook." May tried to stand, but her legs still shook. Caleb kept a steadying arm around her. "Yes, sir. May, I'm so sorry about—" "Fire's not your fault," Stone interrupted. "These old buildings, single chimney fire can take the whole thing. You hurt—" "No, sir, just smoke." Stone's eyes moved between her and Caleb, noting the protective way the younger man held her. "Caleb, take her to the main house. Mrs. Paulson can tend her. We'll sort the rest in the morning." "I can help with the fire," May protested weakly. "You can rest," Stone said firmly. "That's an order." Caleb didn't wait for further discussion. He swept May up again, ignoring her feeble protests, and carried her toward the big house. Behind them, the kitchen roof collapsed in a shower of sparks, taking with it the last of May's independence. Mrs. Paulson, the housekeeper, was a motherly woman who took charge immediately. She installed May in a guest bedroom, brought warm water for washing, and produced a clean nightgown from somewhere. "You're lucky to be alive, child," she tutted, examining May's singed hair and the minor burns on her hands. "What were you thinking, going back in there?" May clutched her mother's cookbook, the only thing she'd saved. "I couldn't lose everything." "Mrs. Paulson's eyes softened. "Ah, dear, things can be replaced. Lives can't." But May knew better. Some things, once lost, never came back. Security, independence, the ability to walk away when things got bad. All of it had burned with the kitchen. Caleb appeared in the doorway as Mrs. Paulson was applying salve to May's burns. "How is she?" "She'll mend," Mrs. Paulson replied, though what she was doing in a burning building trying to save possessions. "Thank you, Mrs. Paulson," Caleb interrupted gently. Could we have a moment? The housekeeper huffed but departed, leaving them alone. Caleb approached slowly, as if May might bolt. Maybe she would have, if she'd had anywhere to go. "It was just a cookbook," she said before he could speak, her voice still raw from smoke. "Stupid to risk my life for it." "Not stupid if it mattered to you." He sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain proper distance. "Was it special?" May traced the leather cover with one finger. "It was my mother's. She died when I was 12. It's all I have left of her." "Then I'm glad you saved it." The simple acceptance undid her. Tears came then for her lost wages, her burned sanctuary, her mother long dead, and the fear that never quite left her. What would she do now? Where would she go? "Hey," Caleb said softly. "It's going to be all right." "You don't understand." May managed through the tears. "That money was everything. Without it, I'm trapped here, dependent on Mr. Stone's goodwill, on whether he wants to rebuild, on me." Caleb finished quietly. May's tears stopped abruptly. She stared at him, not understanding. "You're not trapped," he continued, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a leather pouch, heavy with coin, and placed it on the bedside table. "This is yours. 3 months' wages plus extra for the exemplary work. Enough to go wherever you want, whenever you want." "I can't take your money. It's not mine. It's yours. What you earned." He met her eyes steadily. "But I hope you won't use it. Not to leave, anyway." May looked at the pouch. Freedom in leather and coin. She could go tonight if she wanted, find another town, another kitchen, another life. The fire had cut her ties here as surely as a knife. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care if I stay or go?" Caleb was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, more cultured. The careful cowhand drawl gone. "Because I've been running from myself for 2 years, and watching you face every challenge head-on makes me want to stop running. Because you make this place feel less like exile and more like home. Because—" He paused, seeming to gather himself. "I should tell you the truth about who I am." May waited, her heart beating strangely fast. "My name is Caleb Stone," he said quietly. "Samuel Stone is my father." The words hung in the air between them. May stared, pieces clicking into place. His educated speech when he forgot to hide it. The way the men deferred to him. His certainty about his father's reactions. "You're the heir to all this," she said flatly. "And you've been pretending to be a common cowhand." "Not pretending. I am a cowhand. Just also happen to be the boss's son." His smile was rueful. Disappointed. May didn't know what she felt. Betrayed. Maybe foolish. Certainly. She'd allowed herself to trust him, to lean on him, thinking he understood what it was like to work for survival. But he'd always had this to fall back on. Wealth, position, power. "I think you should go," she said quietly. "May—" "Please." She couldn't look at him. "I need to think." He stood slowly. "Keep the money. Whatever you decide, you've earned it." He paused at the door. "For what it's worth. Everything else I've said to you has been true. Every word." After he left, May sat in the elegant guest room, so different from her small space off the kitchen. Her mother's cookbook lay in her lap, smoke-stained but intact. The money pouch sat on the table, promising freedom. But freedom to go where to do what, start over in another town, another kitchen, until something else went wrong. She was tired of running, tired of starting over, tired of being alone. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, expecting Mrs. Paulson. It was Samuel Stone. The rancher entered and took the chair by the window, studying her with sharp eyes. "Mrs. Paulson says you'll be fine." "Yes, sir." "Good." He was quiet a moment. "My son tells me you've been doing excellent work. Says the men have never eaten better." "I have tried my best, sir." "He also says you'll be leaving now that the kitchen's burned." May looked at her hands. "Burned and work-worn." "I don't know yet, sir." "I'd like you to stay," Stone said bluntly. "I'll rebuild the kitchen, better than before. Proper quarters for you, too. Not that closet you've been sleeping in. You'd have full charge of not just the bunkhouse meals, but the main house, too, when we entertain." It was a generous offer, more than she'd dared hope for. "But why?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Stone's weathered face creased in what might have been a smile. "I know my son defied me to stay here working cattle instead of taking his place in society. I know he's been different these past weeks. Less angry, more settled. I know he knocked Red Callahan flat for disrespecting you, and that tells me more about your character than any reference letter." May felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Mr. Stone, I also know," he continued more gently, "what it's like to need a second chance. My wife came from humble beginnings. There were those who said I married beneath my station. They were fools." His eyes grew distant. "She made this place a home. When she died, Caleb and I, well, we lost our way. Maybe you can help us find it again." The offer hung between them, heavy with possibility. A real position, security, a future, but also Caleb, with his winter blue eyes and his secrets and the way he made her feel things she'd thought burned out of her. "Can I have time to think?" May asked. Stone stood. "Of course, but don't think too long. Spring's coming, and I want that new kitchen built before the busy season." He paused at the door. "Oh, and may that boy of mine may be heir to all this. But if he troubles you, you come to me direct. I didn't raise him to take advantage." After he left, May sat alone with her thoughts and her mother's cookbook. She opened it carefully, reading the familiar recipes in her mother's careful hand. At the back, on the last page, words she'd read 1,000 times. "My darling May, wherever life takes you, remember that home isn't a place. It's where you're brave enough to stop running." Outside the window, she could see the smoldering remains of the kitchen, but she could also see the mountains beyond, painted silver by moonlight, and the vast sky full of stars. It was beautiful country, hard but honest, like the man who'd carried her from the flames, like the choice she had to make. May closed the cookbook and lay back against the pillows. Tomorrow she would decide. Tonight she would rest in this soft bed, in this safe room, and try not to think about winter blue eyes and strong arms and the way Caleb had said her name like a prayer. The fire had taken her refuge, but given her something else, the chance to choose her path freely, without desperation driving her. It was terrifying. It was also maybe a gift. The morning after the fire, May stood at the edge of what had been her kitchen, surveying the charred ruins. Smoke still rose from the blackened timbers, and the acrid smell made her eyes water. Or perhaps that was something else entirely. She'd made her decision in the pre-dawn hours, lying sleepless in that too-soft bed. The money pouch was tucked into her coat pocket, her mother's cookbook wrapped carefully in cloth and secured in a canvas bag. Everything she owned in the world, ready to travel. "You're really leaving, then?" She didn't turn at Caleb's voice. She'd heard him approaching, recognized the sound of his boots on the frozen ground. "It's for the best." "For who?" And now she did turn, fixing him with a steady gaze. "For everyone. You lied to me." "I withheld truth," he corrected. "There's a difference." "Not to someone who's been lied to her whole life." May pulled her coat tighter. "I trusted you. Do you know how rare that is for me, and all along you were playing at being someone you're not?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I wasn't playing. Everything I did, everything I said, was real. The only thing I didn't tell you was my last name. Your last name changes everything." The words burst from her with more force than she'd intended. You're not some cowhand who understands what it's like to have nothing. You're the owner's son. You've always had a safety net. You think that makes it easier? His voice rose to match hers. You think growing up with expectations and responsibilities you never asked for, being told who you have to be every moment of every day, is some kind of blessing? Better than wondering where your next meal will come from. Is it? Caleb stepped closer, his eyes blazing. You want to know why I was at the Rose Bell that night? I was drinking myself stupid, trying to forget that my father had just arranged a marriage for me with some banker's daughter. A business transaction. He called it, my life mapped out in ledgers and profit margins. May blinked, caught off guard. I didn't. No, you didn't, because you were too busy assuming I couldn't possibly understand hardship. His voice turned bitter. After my mother died, this place became a prison. Every room, every fence post reminded us of her. Father buried himself in work and whiskey. I buried myself in other things. Neither of us could stand to be here, but neither could leave. The fight went out of May as suddenly as it had come. She saw him clearly now, not the confident air playing at being a cowhand, but a man carrying his own ghosts. So you ran, she said quietly. So I ran. He laughed humorlessly. Told my father I wouldn't be his puppet, wouldn't marry for his business deals. He said if I wanted to act like hired help instead of his son, I could work like hired help, so I have 2 years now. Caleb! But then you showed up, he continued, his voice softening. Covered in snow, determined as hell, asking for nothing but a chance to work. And suddenly, this place didn't feel like a prison anymore. May's heart clenched. Don't, please don't. Don't what? Tell you the truth. He moved closer still, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. The truth is, I'm selfish. I don't want you to go. Not because the ranch needs a cook, not because my father approves, but because you make me want to be better than I am. I can't, May whispered. I can't be what you need. I'm not some respectable woman who can help you reconcile with your father and take your place in society. You're just the strongest, bravest, most maddening woman I've ever met. Caleb interrupted. And if you think I give a damn about society's opinion after everything I've thrown away to avoid it, you haven't been paying attention. They stood there in the ruins of the kitchen, morning sun painting the frost-covered ground silver. May wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly it hurt. But experience had taught her that wanting something was the surest way to lose it. I need to go, she said finally. The morning stage. There's something else. Caleb reached into his coat, pulling out an envelope. This came for you yesterday, but with the fire. I forgot to give it to you. May frowned, taking the envelope. Her name was written on the front in careful script, but no return address. She opened it slowly, aware of Caleb watching. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The photograph showed a young girl, perhaps 7 or 8, with familiar eyes and a shy smile. The letter was brief. Dear May, I hope this letter finds you. I've been searching for 3 years, ever since Mama passed. She told me about you before she died. Said you were my sister, said you left home young and she always regretted not going after you. I'm in Denver now, working as a seamstress. If you get this, please write back. I'd like to know my sister, your sister, Anna Morrison E. Campbell. May's hands shook. She read the letter again, then studied the photograph. The girl did look like her mother around the eyes, the shape of her face. May, Caleb's voice seemed to come from far away. What is it? A sister, she whispered. I have a sister. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. My mother remarried after I left. Had another daughter. I never knew. Caleb's arms came around her as her knees buckled, holding her as sobs shook her frame. A sister, family, someone who was looking for her, wanting to know her. Denver's not far, Caleb said quietly into her hair. Few days by stage. You could go see her. May pulled back to look at him. But you could also write to her. Invite her here. His hands cupped her face gently. You don't have to run anymore. May, you have choices now. I don't know how to have choices, she admitted brokenly. I only know how to survive. Then maybe it's time to learn how to live. Samuel Stone found them there. May still clutched in his son's arms. If he disapproved of the impropriety, he didn't show it. Miss May, he said formally, have you considered my offer? May straightened, wiping her eyes. The letter was still clutched in her hand, promise and possibility in equal measure. I have Mr. Stone, but I have a condition. The rancher's eyebrows rose. Oh, I'll need time off to visit my sister in Denver, and... She glanced at Caleb, then back to his father. I won't be any part of games between you and your son. If I stay, it's as cook and household manager. Nothing more. Fair enough. Stone agreed easily. Too easily, May thought, catching the glance that passed between father and son. When would you like to start? The men need feeding, May said practically. I can work from the main house kitchen until the new one's built, but I'll need help. These burned hands won't heal if I'm hauling water and wood alone. I'll help, Caleb said immediately. You'll work, his father corrected. Like the hand you claim to be, Miss May will have proper assistance from the house staff. Another look passed between them, this one sharper. May sensed old arguments beneath the surface but didn't pry. She had enough complications without getting tangled in their family disputes. Then we have an agreement, she said formally, offering her bandaged hand to Stone. He shook it carefully. Welcome officially to Stone River Ranch. Miss May, I think you'll do very well here. As he walked away, May turned to find Caleb watching her with an expression she couldn't read. So you're staying, he said. For now. She tucked the letter carefully into her pocket, next to her mother's cookbook. I have a sister to write to, men to feed, a kitchen to rebuild. And me, the question was quiet, vulnerable. Where do I fit in your plans? May looked at him, this complicated man with his hidden depths and winter sky eyes. She thought of all the reasons to keep her distance, all the ways this could go wrong. Then she thought of how he'd carried her from the fire, how he'd defended her honor, how he made her want things she'd thought herself too broken to want. I don't know, she said honestly. But maybe that's okay. Maybe not everything needs to be planned out. A slow smile spread across his face. May Campbell, are you saying you're willing to see where things go? I'm saying I'm tired of running from possibilities because they might hurt. She took a deep breath. And I'm saying if you lie to me again, even by omission, I'll put salt in your coffee for a month. Noted. He offered her his arm. Can I walk you back to the house, Mrs.? Paulson's making breakfast, but I bet the men would prefer your cooking. May took his arm, feeling the solid strength of him through his coat. They'll survive one more day of her cooking. I need to write a letter. As they walked away from the ruined kitchen, May felt something shift inside her chest, for the first time in years. She was choosing to stay not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she wanted to. She had money in her pocket, a sister to meet, and work that mattered. And if she also had a complicated man who made her heart race, well, that was a risk she was finally willing to take. Caleb, she said as they approached the main house. Yes? Thank you for the letter, for everything. He squeezed her arm gently. Thank you for staying. They climbed the steps together, leaving the ruins behind. Tomorrow they would start rebuilding. The kitchen. Trust. Maybe something more. But today, May had a letter to write and a future to imagine. For the first time in longer than she could remember, that future looked bright. Inside, Mrs. Paulson was indeed making breakfast. filling the house with the smell of bacon and biscuits. The older woman looked up as they entered, noting their linked arms with a knowing smile. "Miss May, shouldn't you be resting those hands?" "I'm fine, Mrs. Paulson, but I could use writing materials, if you have them." "Of course. Dear, in the study, second door on the left. Mr. Stone won't mind." May reluctantly released Caleb's arm. As she turned to go, he caught her hand. "May, when you write to your sister, maybe mention you found a place here. A good place, with people who care about you." She squeezed his fingers gently. "I will." The study was all dark wood and leather, intimidating in its masculinity. But May found paper and ink easily enough and settled at the massive desk to write the most important letter of her life. "Dear Anna," she began, then stopped, overwhelmed by everything she wanted to say. How did you introduce yourself to a sister you'd never known existed? How did you explain years of absence, of survival, of choices made in desperation? In the end, she kept it simple. "Dear Anna, your letter found me at Stone River Ranch in Montana, where I work as head cook. I was overjoyed to hear from you and to learn I have a sister. I would very much like to know you too. I was young when I left home, and there is much to tell that would be better said in person. Would you consider visiting me here? The ranch is beautiful in spring, and I could arrange for your travel. Or, if you prefer, I could come to Denver once my duties allow. I've recently taken on new responsibilities, but my employer is understanding about family matters. I'm enclosing a small photograph of myself, taken last year in town. I see our mother in your face, and I hope you might see her in mine as well. Please write back soon. I have so many questions, and I hope many years to learn the answers. Your sister, May." She sealed the letter carefully, then sat back in the leather chair. Through the window, she could see Caleb talking with some of the hands, gesturing toward where the new kitchen would be built. He must have felt her gaze because he looked up, offering a small wave. May waved back, then rose to find Mrs. Paulson. There was breakfast to help serve, men to feed, a life to build. The morning stage would take her letter to Denver, carrying her hopes with it. But she would remain here, no longer running, no longer just surviving. Finally ready to live. Spring came slowly to Montana, creeping across the valleys like a cautious visitor. The snow retreated to the high peaks, leaving muddy ground and the first brave shoots of green grass. The new kitchen was taking shape, its frame rising from the ashes of the old like a promise of renewal. May stood in the doorway of the boarding house on Main Street, watching the morning stage arrive. She'd been in town for 3 weeks now, finding temporary lodgings while the ranch kitchen was rebuilt. The separation from Stone River Ranch, from Caleb, sat heavy in her chest, though she'd never admit it aloud. "Letter for you, Miss Campbell." The boarding house proprietress, Mrs. Henley, handed her an envelope. May's heart leaped seeing Anna's careful handwriting. She tore it open eagerly, scanning the contents. Her sister was coming. Next month, on the spring stage, the photograph Anna included showed a young woman now, no longer the child from the first picture, with their mother's eyes and a determined set to her jaw that May recognized as her own. "Good news, Mrs.?" Henley asked, noting May's smile. "The best," May replied, folding the letter carefully. "Family coming to visit." She took her coffee to the small room she'd rented, settling by the window to read Anna's letter again. Her sister wrote of her work in Denver, of the family that had taken her in after their mother died, of her dreams of opening her own dress shop someday. So much life lived separately, so much time lost. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in." But it wasn't Mrs. Henley who entered. Caleb stood in her doorway, hat in hand, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Caleb." She rose quickly, smoothing her skirts. "What are you doing here? Is something wrong at the ranch?" "No, nothing wrong." He stepped inside, seeming to fill the small space. "I had business in town. Thought I'd check on you." I'm fine. The words came out stiffer than she'd intended. The boarding house is comfortable enough. May. His voice held gentle reproach. It's been 3 weeks. Are you planning to stay angry forever? I'm not angry. She turned to the window, unable to meet his eyes. I just needed space to think. And have you thought, too much, she wanted to say. She'd thought about him every night, wondered what he was doing, whether he missed her presence as much as she missed his. But the distance had been necessary. She'd needed to know if what she felt was real or just gratitude mixed with proximity. Anna's coming to visit, she said instead. Next month. That's wonderful. He moved closer, and she caught the familiar scent of leather and soap. You must be excited. Nervous, May admitted. What if she doesn't like me? What if we have nothing in common besides blood? Impossible. Caleb's voice was warm with certainty. No one could meet you and not like you. Red Callahan would disagree. Red Callahan was a fool. His hand touched her shoulder lightly. May, please, look at me. She turned reluctantly. 3 weeks had changed him somehow. He looked tired, worn down at the edges. His shirt was rumpled, his usual careful control absent. You look terrible, she said without thinking. A rueful smile touched his lips. Thanks, you look beautiful. Heat flooded her cheeks. Caleb! I know you needed space, he said quickly. I understand that, but I need you to know something. These 3 weeks have been the longest of my life. The ranch feels empty without you. I feel empty without you. The ranch has Mrs. Paulson cooking. I'm not talking about the cooking. He caught her hands, his calloused fingers gentle on her healing burns. I'm talking about you. Your laugh when Tommy says something foolish, the way you hum while you work, how you stand up to anyone who tries to diminish you, how you make me want to be the man you deserve. May's heart raced, but she forced herself to pull back. What about your father? His expectations, that banker's daughter? I told him the truth, that I'd found someone, that she was worth more than all the business deals in Montana. His thumb traced circles on her palm. He wasn't happy at first, said I was throwing away my future for a woman with no family, no connections, no... He was right, May interrupted, old hurts flaring. I don't have those things. You have a sister, Caleb countered. You have skills that keep 30 men fed and happy. You have courage most people only dream of. And you have me, if you'll have me. The words hung between them, heavy with promise and possibility. May searched his face, looking for doubt, for regret, for anything that suggested this was temporary. She found only steady determination and something deeper, warmer, that made her breath catch. I can't be some society wife, she warned. I don't know how to host tea parties or make small talk about nothing. Good, I hate tea parties. I'm serious, Caleb. People will talk. Your business associates, the other ranchers. Let them... He pulled her closer, his hands framing her face. I've spent 2 years as a ranch hand. You think I care what society thinks? You might someday, when the novelty wears off and you remember what you've given up. The only thing I've given up is pretense. His forehead touched hers. May, I'm not asking you to be anything but what you are. I'm asking you to let me love you, to let me stand beside you, to build something real together. Tears pricked her eyes. I don't know how to be loved, not the way you mean. Then we'll learn together. The simplicity of it broke through her last defense. May let herself lean into him, let his arms come around her, let herself feel safe in a way she hadn't in years. I've been writing in my mother's cookbook, she whispered against his chest. Adding my own recipes feels like building on what she started. That's beautiful. I want to show Anna when she comes. Share that part of our mother with her. You will. His lips pressed against her hair. The kitchen will be finished by then. You can cook her all your mother's favorites. May pulled back to look at him. You're sure about us even knowing where I've been? I'm sure, he interrupted firmly. Your past made you who you are. I wouldn't change a thing about you. Even my stubbornness. Especially your stubbornness. His smile turned teasing. Though you might work on the running away when things get complicated. I didn't run away. I made a strategic retreat to assess the situation. Is that what we're calling it? She swatted his chest lightly. Don't make me regret this. Never. The teasing faded, replaced by something deeper. I mean that, May, I'll never make you regret choosing me. The morning sun streamed through the window, painting everything golden. Outside, the sounds of town life continued, wagons rattling, dogs barking, people calling to each other. But inside the small room, the world had narrowed to just the two of them. I should get back, May said reluctantly. Mrs. Henley will wonder. Come back with me, Caleb urged. The men miss your cooking. Mrs. Paulson's trying her best, but yesterday she served something she called stew that I'm pretty sure was just water with things floating in it. May laughed despite herself. Poor Mrs. Paulson. She's a wonder with linens and silver, but hopeless in the kitchen. So, come home. The word hung between them, loaded with meaning. The foreman's cottage is empty. It's proper enough, separate from the main house and bunkhouse. You could stay there until the new kitchen quarters are ready. Home. Such a simple word, but one she'd never quite been able to apply anywhere since leaving her childhood behind. Could Stone River Ranch really become that for her? All right, she heard herself say. But I have conditions. Of course you do. His grin was wide, boyish, transforming his face. Name them. First, I run my kitchen my way. No interference, even from you. Agreed. Second, when Anna visits, she's to be treated as family. I won't have anyone making her feel unwelcome because of who I am. She'll be an honored guest. I'll make sure of it. Third, May hesitated, then forged ahead. We take things slow. I need time to adjust, to trust. I can't just... May, his hands caught hers again. We have all the time in the world. I'm not going anywhere. The certainty in his voice undid her. How long had it been since someone had promised to stay, since she'd believed them? Then I'll come back, she said softly. But you're carrying my trunk. My hands are still healing, you know. Gladly. He kissed her forehead, gentle as a whisper. I'd carry a dozen trunks if it meant you coming home. Within an hour, they were loaded in the wagon. May's few possessions secured in the back. Mrs. Henley had been sorry to see her go, but understanding. That's a good man you've got there, the older woman had whispered. Don't let pride keep you from happiness, dear. Now, as the wagon rolled out of town toward the ranch, May found herself thinking about pride and happiness and the courage it took to choose joy over fear. Tell me about the new kitchen, she said, needing normal conversation to steady her nerves. Caleb launched into enthusiastic description, larger than before, with a proper new stove, windows facing the mountains, a pantry twice the size of the old one. His excitement was infectious, and May found herself adding suggestions, planning where everything would go. And there's something else, he said as the ranch came into view. But that's a surprise for later. I don't much care for surprises, May warned. You'll like this one. The ranch looked different in spring. The harsh edges of winter had softened, and everywhere she looked, life was returning. New calves in the pasture, fresh paint on the barn. And there, the skeleton of her new kitchen rising from the ashes. The men were gathered as the wagon pulled up, trying to look casual and failing miserably. Tommy Morrison was actually bouncing on his heels with excitement. Miss May, he called out, you're back. Did you miss my cooking that much? She asked, letting Caleb help her down. Mrs. Paulson made something she called soup yesterday. Frank Cooper said gravely, I think it was just hot water with salt. We've been living on hardtack and hope." "Drama queens, all of you," May said, but she was smiling. "I suppose you'll want a proper dinner tonight." The cheer that went up could probably be heard in the next county. As the men dispersed and Caleb carried her things to the foreman's cottage, May stood looking at her new kitchen-to-be. It would be magnificent when finished, more than she'd dared dream of when she'd first arrived in a snowstorm, desperate and frightened. "The surprise is in your cottage," Caleb said, coming up beside her. "Want to see?" The cottage was small but clean, with a proper bedroom and sitting area, and there, on a shelf by the window, sat a complete set of new pots and pans, gleaming copper bottoms catching the light. "Caleb," she breathed, "these are too much." "Nothing's too much for you." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Besides, they're not just from me. The men all chipped in, said they wanted to make sure you had everything you needed to stay." Tears blurred her vision. When had she last felt so welcomed, so wanted? "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll stay. Say you'll fill this ranch with good food and laughter. Say you'll let me court you proper, the way you deserve." May turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. Yes, to all of it. His kiss was gentle, careful, giving her room to pull away if she needed. But May didn't want to pull away. She wanted this, the warmth, the safety, the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after. When they finally parted, both breathless, she saw her future clear as mountain air. Not the desperate scrambling she'd known, but something solid and real. A kitchen to run, a sister to know, a man who saw her truly and wanted her anyway. "I should start dinner," she said, not moving from his arms. "In a minute." He held her closer, and May let herself be held. Outside, she could hear the ranch coming to life, cattle lowing, horses nickering, men calling to each other. Her people, her place, her home. It had taken a fire to show her that some things were worth rebuilding, that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was stay. "Welcome home, May," Caleb whispered against her hair. "Home," she repeated, tasting the word like a new recipe. It felt right. It felt true. And for the first time in years, May Campbell let herself believe in permanence. 3 years had passed since the fire, and May's little restaurant sat nestled beside the old wagon road like a welcoming beacon. May's Kitchen, the simple sign read, painted in blue letters by her own hand. What had started as a desperate dream had become reality. A small dining room with 8 tables, checkered curtains at the windows, and the best food between Billings and Helena. The morning sun streamed through those windows now, illuminating the worn but clean floorboards and the collection of wildflowers Anna had placed on each table. Her sister had arrived for her annual spring visit, bringing with her the Denver fashions and city gossip that amused the local ranchers' wives. "You're wool gathering again," Anna observed, entering from the kitchen with a fresh pot of coffee. At 21, she'd grown into a beautiful young woman, though she still had their mother's gentle eyes. "Thinking about a certain rancher," May smiled, wiping down the counter. "Just thinking how different life is now." "Different good, I hope. The best kind of different." The bell over the door chimed, and Tommy Morrison entered. Now a young man of 20 with a wife and baby son. "Morning, Miss May. Got any of those cinnamon rolls left?" "Always save some for my regulars," May assured him, fetching a basket from behind the counter. "How's little James?" "Growing like a weed. Sarah says he'll be walking soon." Tommy's face glowed with fatherly pride. "Hard to believe it's been 3 years since I was that green kid spouting foolishness about decent women." "We all grow up," May said gently, handing him the rolls. "Some faster than others." After he left, Anna studied her sister. "You've forgiven everyone, haven't you? All those who judged you." "Holding on to anger is like carrying hot coals," May replied, her mother's words coming easily now. It only burns the one who holds them. The morning passed in comfortable routine. Breakfast customers came and went, ranchers heading to market, travelers from the stage, families from town. May knew them all now, their preferences and stories, their joys and sorrows. She'd become part of the fabric of this place, woven in so thoroughly that few remembered when she hadn't been here. It was near noon when Caleb appeared, as he did most days when he could manage it. 3 years had added fine lines around his eyes and a steadiness to his bearing. He'd taken over more of the ranch operations as his father stepped back, but he still made time for her, still looked at her like she was his whole world. "Ladies," he greeted, removing his hat. "Anna, you're looking well. How's Denver treating you?" "Can't complain," Anna replied with a knowing smile. "Though I think I'll step into the kitchen. These pies won't make themselves." When they were alone, Caleb reached across the counter to take May's hand. "Busy morning." "The usual. Mrs. Henderson wants me to cater her daughter's wedding. The Patterson boys ate their weight in flapjacks. Oh, and there's a letter from that restaurant in San Francisco." Caleb's expression tightened. "The one wanting to hire you?" "The very same." May squeezed his fingers. "I already wrote back declining. This is home." "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." She came around the counter to stand before him. "Caleb Stone, when will you understand I'm not going anywhere? Not to San Francisco, not to Denver with Anna. Nowhere. You're stuck with me." His arms came around her, and May leaned into the familiar warmth. "Promise." "I've been promising for 3 years now. You'd think you'd believe me by now. Maybe I just like hearing it." They were interrupted by the bell chiming again. May turned to see a woman enter expensively dressed, with the kind of polished beauty that spoke of city breeding and money. She looked around the simple restaurant with barely concealed disdain. "Can I help you?" May asked, moving from Caleb's arms with practiced ease. "I'm looking for Mr. Caleb Stone," the woman announced. "I was told I might find him here." "I'm Caleb Stone." His voice had gone carefully neutral. "And you are—" "Charlotte Pemberton, soon to be Charlotte Winters." She smiled, showing perfect teeth. "Though I suppose you know me better as the banker's daughter your father tried to match you with." May felt Caleb stiffen beside her. Charlotte's gaze moved between them, taking in May's simple dress and work-worn hands with a small smile. "Ah," Charlotte said softly. "You must be the cook." "I own this restaurant," May corrected, chin lifting. "And you're a long way from Denver, Miss Pemberton." "Indeed, but when I heard Caleb was still unmarried, I had to see for myself. Father's business has expanded considerably. You see, the merger would be even more profitable now." "There isn't going to be any merger," Caleb said firmly. "I thought I made that clear years ago." "People change their minds." Charlotte's gaze lingered on May, especially when they realize certain arrangements are beneath their station. The words hung in the air like a slap. May felt the old shame trying to rise, the voice that whispered she wasn't good enough, would never be good enough. But then Caleb's hand found hers, warm and steady. "The only thing beneath my station," he said quietly, "would be marrying for money instead of love. Now, if you'll excuse us. Miss Pemberton, we have work to do." Charlotte's perfect composure cracked slightly. "You're making a mistake. When your father's gone, you'll need connections, influence." "I'll need May." Caleb interrupted. "Just as I have these past 3 years. Good day, Miss Pemberton." The woman left in a swish of silk and wounded pride. May stood frozen, old insecurities flooding back despite all the ground she'd gained. "May." Caleb turned her to face him. "Look at me." She did, finding his eyes blazing with indignation. "She had no right. She's gone, and she doesn't matter." His hands cupped her face. You matter. This place you've built matters. The life we're making together matters. But she's right, May whispered. I am just a cook. I don't have connections or influence or... You have something better. Anna's voice came from the kitchen doorway where she'd been listening. You have love. And trust me, as someone who's seen plenty of society marriages in Denver, that's worth more than all the banking mergers in the world. May looked between them, her sister, fierce and protective, and Caleb, steady as the mountains. When did you both become so wise? Must be all your good cooking, Anna said lightly. Feeds the brain as well as the body. The tension broke, and May found herself laughing. Well then, I'd better get back to it. The lunch crowd will be here soon. But Caleb didn't release her yet. May, I need you to hear this. Really hear it. I choose you. Every day, in every way. I choose you. Not because you're convenient or profitable or socially acceptable. Because you're you. Tears pricked her eyes. Even when ghosts from your past show up trying to lure you away. Especially then. He kissed her forehead. Though I noticed she didn't mention how her father's bank nearly failed last year. Probably why she's really here. They need our business more than we need theirs. Caleb Stone, May said with mock severity. Are you gossiping? Merely stating facts. His grin was unrepentant. Now, what's the lunch special? I'm starving. The afternoon passed peacefully. Charlotte Pemberton's visit seemed like a bad dream as familiar faces filled the restaurant. Ranchers' wives exchanged recipes with May. Children begged for her famous sugar cookies. And old cowboys nursed coffee while swapping tall tales. As the sun began to sink toward the mountains, Caleb returned. This time, he wasn't alone. Samuel Stone accompanied him, looking older but still formidable. The elder Stone had softened toward May over the years, especially after she'd nursed him through a bout of pneumonia that first winter. Miss May, he greeted formally, though his eyes were warm. Busy day. The usual. Mr. Stone, can I get you coffee pie? Just conversation. He settled at a corner table, gesturing for them to join him. Anna appeared from the kitchen, and he included her with a nod. All of you. When they were seated, Samuel studied them each in turn. I hear Charlotte Pemberton paid you a visit. News travels fast, Caleb observed. Indeed. His father's expression was unreadable. She also visited me, made quite an offer. May's heart sank. Despite everything, the fear remained that practical considerations would win out, that she would lose this life she'd built. I told her, Samuel continued, that Stone River Ranch doesn't make deals with desperate people, and anyone who would insult my future daughter-in-law in her own establishment is not someone we do business with. The words took a moment to register. Future daughter-in-law, May repeated faintly. Samuel raised an eyebrow at his son. You haven't asked her yet, boy. What are you waiting for? You've been courting the woman for 3 years. Caleb's face flushed. I was planning. That is, I wanted the moment to be... perfect, Anna suggested with a grin. May doesn't need perfect. She just needs honest. Well then, Caleb turned to May, taking her hands. This isn't how I planned it. I had a whole speech prepared. Was going to take you to that spot by the river where the wildflowers grow. Caleb, May interrupted softly. Right, honest. He took a deep breath. May Campbell, you've turned my life upside down in the best possible way. You've made me want to be better, do better, live better. You've taken a man who was running from himself and given him a reason to stand still. I love your strength, your kindness, your terrible temper when someone tracks mud through your clean kitchen. I do not have a terrible temper, May protested, even as tears tracked down her cheeks. You threw a rolling pin at Tommy last week. He was reaching over my fresh bread with dirty hands. My point is, Caleb continued, fighting a smile, I love every part of you. The past that shaped you, the present you've built, the future I hope we'll share. Will you marry me? May looked around the table, at Samuel, nodding approval, at Anna, practically vibrating with excitement, and finally at Caleb. Dear Caleb, who'd stood by her through every storm. I have conditions, she said, voice not quite steady. Of course you do, Caleb laughed. Name them. First, I keep the restaurant. It's mine, something I built. Wouldn't have it any other way. Second, we live simple. No big house unless we need it. No society parties unless we want them. Agreed. Third, she paused, searching for words. You have to promise to always be honest with me, no matter what. I promise. His hands tightened on hers. Is that a yes? That's a yes. The kiss that followed would have scandalized proper society. But there was no one here to judge, just family, chosen and blood, celebrating love that had grown from ashes into something strong and true. Later, as evening painted the sky purple and gold, May stood in her restaurant looking out at the life she'd built. Anna was in the kitchen, humming as she prepared tomorrow's bread. Samuel had returned to the ranch, but not before gruffly welcoming her officially to the family, and Caleb. Caleb sat at the corner table, working on ranch ledgers by lamplight, as comfortable here as in his own home. This was what she'd been searching for all those years ago when she'd stumbled through a blizzard to Stone River Ranch. Not just survival, not just work, but this belonging, purpose, love. Regrets? Caleb asked, looking up from his work. Never, May replied, and meant it. Tomorrow there would be a wedding to plan, a business to run, a life to build together. There would be challenges too. There always were. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. Outside, stars began to appear in the vast Montana sky. May had traveled a long road to get here, from desperation to hope, from surviving to thriving. And the best part? The journey was far from over. She had meals to cook, love to nurture, and dreams to chase, all from right here, in this place she'd made her own. May Campbell, soon to be May Stone, was finally home. The old oak tree stood sentinel on the hillside, its branches spreading wide like protective arms. May had always loved this spot you could see for miles across the Montana Valley, the mountains rising blue and distant, the ranch spread below like a child's toy set. Today, wildflowers carpeted the ground in purple and gold, and the June air carried the sweet scent of wild roses. Are you sure you want it simple? Anna asked, adjusting May's veil for the 10th time. We could still add more ribbons, maybe some of those silk flowers from Denver. It's perfect as it is, May assured her sister, smoothing the cream-colored dress Anna had sewn with her own hands. It wasn't fancy, just good cotton with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. But it was hers, made with love. And that mattered more than all the silk in the world. You're perfect, Anna corrected, stepping back to admire her handiwork. Mama would be so proud. May touched the small cameo at her throat, another gift from Anna, who'd saved it from their mother's things. I wish she could be here. She is, Anna said softly. In you, in me, in that cookbook you guard like treasure. She's here. Through the trees, they could hear the gathering crowd. Half the county had turned out for the wedding, drawn by curiosity and genuine affection. May Campbell, the woman who'd arrived in a blizzard with nothing but determination, was marrying Caleb Stone, heir to one of the largest ranches in Montana. It was the stuff of fairy tales, or so Mrs. Henderson had declared while ordering 3 pies for the reception. Ready? Anna asked. May took a deep breath, thinking of the journey that had brought her here, the desperate nights at the Rose Bell, the terror of starting over, the fire that had nearly taken everything, the slow building of trust and love. Every step had led to this moment. standing in her mother's cameo and her sister's creation, about to marry a man who saw her truly. "I've been ready for this my whole life," she said. "I just didn't know it." They made their way down the hillside to where the crowd waited. Samuel Stone stood at the front, having insisted on walking her down the aisle since she had no father present. He looked distinguished in his Sunday best, his weathered face soft with emotion. "You clean up nice, Mr. Stone," May said, taking his offered arm. "As do you, my dear." He patted her hand gently. "Though you'd look beautiful in flour sack cloth. It's what's inside that shines." The makeshift aisle was strewn with wildflowers, gathered by the ranch children that morning. As they walked, May saw familiar faces. Mrs. Paulson dabbing at her eyes, Tommy Morrison holding his young son, Frank Cooper and the other ranch hands scrubbed clean and grinning. Even some of her restaurant regulars had come, the lunch crowd who'd become like extended family. But her eyes found Caleb, and everything else faded away. He stood beneath the oak tree in a black suit she'd never seen before, his usually unruly hair slicked back, though a stubborn curl had already escaped to fall across his forehead. His face when he saw her, the wonder, the joy, the complete certainty, made her steps quicken despite the solemnity of the moment. "Steady," Samuel murmured with amusement. "He's not going anywhere." When they reached the front, Samuel placed May's hand in Caleb's with obvious satisfaction. "Take care of her, son." "With my life," Caleb promised, his eyes never leaving May's face. The ceremony was simple, led by the circuit preacher who'd ridden 2 days to perform it. May barely heard the words, too lost in the reality of what was happening. This man, this good, patient, stubborn man, was choosing her. Not despite her past, but because of everything it had made her. When it came time for the vows, Caleb surprised her by speaking his own words instead of the traditional ones. "May Campbell," he began, his voice carrying clear across the gathering. "You walked into my life during a blizzard and turned everything upside down. You showed me that strength isn't about never falling. It's about always getting back up. You taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose imperfections fit perfectly with your own." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something that made May gasp, a handkerchief, delicately embroidered with a single word, "Forgiven." "I promise to stand beside you through every storm," he continued, pressing the handkerchief into her hands. "To trust you with my whole heart, to support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine, to love you not in spite of where you've been, but because of where you're going, and to never, ever make you regret choosing us." May clutched the handkerchief, tears streaming freely now. When the preacher nodded for her to speak, she had to clear her throat twice before words would come. "Caleb Stone," she managed. "You saw me when I couldn't see myself. You stood for me when I couldn't stand. You gave me space to be strong and safe harbor when I needed to be weak. You've never asked me to be anything but what I am, and somehow that's made me want to be better." She took a shaky breath. "I promise to feed you well, to only throw rolling pins when absolutely necessary, to trust you even when it's hard, and to build a life with you that's honest and real and ours. I promise to choose you, every morning, every difficult day, every joyful moment, forever." "Well then," the preacher said, beaming, "by the power vested in me by God and the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife. Son, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was sweet and fierce and full of promise, and the cheer that went up could probably be heard in the next valley. As they turned to face their community as husband and wife, May felt something settle in her chest, a peace she'd never known before, a certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The reception was held in the meadow, long tables groaning under the weight of food. May had insisted on cooking much of it herself, with Anna's help and Mrs. Paulson's supervision. There was roasted beef and creamy potatoes, fresh bread and churned butter, pies of every variety. and a cake that Anna had decorated with real wildflowers. As the afternoon wore on and the dancing began, May found a quiet moment to slip away to the hillside. She needed a moment to breathe, to absorb the magnitude of what had happened. She found Caleb already there, having had the same idea. "Escaping your own wedding," she teased, settling beside him on the grass, not caring about her dress. "Never." He pulled her close. "Just needed a moment with my wife. My wife. I like how that sounds." "May Stone," she tried out. "That'll take some getting used to." "You can still use Campbell for the restaurant if you want. I know it's important to you." May considered this. "No, I think I'll be May Stone everywhere. I'm not hiding anymore. Not from anything." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the celebration below. Someone had brought out a fiddle, and couples were dancing on the grass. Anna was laughing with some of the younger ranch hands, her city sophistication charming them thoroughly. "She's staying another month," May said, "thinking about maybe opening a dress shop in town instead of going back to Denver." "That'd be good. Having family close." Family. The word still felt foreign sometimes, but less so every day. "Caleb," May said softly, "what you did with the handkerchief. How did you know?" He was quiet for a moment. "Remember that first night? After the fire, you talked in your sleep. Kept saying you couldn't be forgiven, that some things couldn't be washed clean. It broke my heart." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I wanted you to have something to hold on to remember that the past is past, that you're forgiven by me, by God, by anyone who matters, but mostly, I hope, by yourself." May fingered the delicate embroidery, throat tight with emotion. "I love you. I don't say it enough, but—" "You say it every day," Caleb interrupted. "In how hard you work, how you care for everyone around you, how you've built a place where people feel welcome. You say it in 1,000 ways. Still, I love you. Caleb Stone, thank you for waiting for me to be ready. Worth every second." As the sun began to sink toward the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, they made their way back to the celebration. There was dancing to be done, cake to cut, well wishes to receive. But May knew the real celebration was this: the quiet moments, the shared understanding, the promise of all the ordinary days to come. Later, as stars emerged in the vast Montana sky, the newlyweds stood at the edge of the meadow. The celebration continued behind them, but they had eyes only for each other. "No regrets?" Caleb asked, echoing his question from the night of their engagement. May thought of all the paths that had led her here, the sorrow and struggle, the nights of desperation, the slow climb back to hope. Every step had been necessary. Every choice had shaped her. "Never," she said firmly. "This is exactly where I meant to be." And there, under the ancient oak tree that had witnessed their vows, surrounded by the family they'd chosen and the life they'd built, May Campbell Stone knew the profound truth of her words. She'd traveled through darkness to find this light, and every difficult mile had been worth it. The girl who'd once served drinks in a place of shadows had become a woman who fed souls in the bright Montana sun. The heart that had once known only survival had learned to thrive, and the love she'd thought herself unworthy of had found her anyway, patient and true and everlasting. As Caleb spun her into one more dance, May laughed with pure joy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dreams, new possibilities. But tonight, she was simply a woman in love, dancing with her husband under the stars, finally and forever home. The end. Thank you so much for joining me on May and Caleb's journey through the wild Montana frontier. I hope their story of resilience, redemption, and the transformative power of love touched your heart as much as it touched mine while sharing it with you. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you listening to this story? Are you cozied up at home on a long drive? Or perhaps winding down after a long day? Share your thoughts about May and Caleb's romance and what moments resonated with you most. If you enjoyed this tale from the Old West, Please subscribe to Wild West Night for more stories of love, adventure, and the indomitable human spirit set against the backdrop of America's frontier. Don't forget to like this video and hit that hype button to help more listeners discover these heartfelt stories of the Wild West. Until our next adventure, partners, keep riding toward your own horizons. And remember, sometimes the greatest treasures are found not in gold or silver, but in the courage to trust, to love, and to build a life worth living.